Thanks, Chad, and COVID changing some plans there. So, with all the partisan rhetoric over the changing of the filibuster, the division is greater than ever in Congress. Joining me now is a member of the Senate Rules Committee, Mississippi Republican Senator Roger Wicker. Senator, first, thanks for joining us here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Edward. Glad to be on with you.
Yeah, we have a lot to cover here. First, do we need changes, first of all, to voting laws in this country? I thought everyone has been able to vote in this country.
It's easier than ever to vote in the United States of America, as evidenced by the huge turnouts we had in 2020 and 2021. Let me say this. John F. Kennedy, back when he was a senator, wrote a book called Profiles in Courage. Thank heaven for Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema this past week for withstanding the browbeating, the unbelievable pressure that they got from their caucus, and standing up for a 2-century-old tradition that has made the United States unique among democracies in the world. My hat is off to them. I disagree with them on many, many issues, but when it came to tossing away one of the greatest tools for bringing consensus together, they stood against their party, and my hat is off to them. I know it was difficult.
Right, and Senator, personal attacks that they endured. So what do you think of the president's speech? Speaking of personal attacks, it was pretty divisive there in Georgia.
Unbelievable. And, I agree with Mitch McConnell. He said he didn't recognize the guy that he had served with for 40 years in the United States Senate. Here's what the bill would have done. It would have provided taxpayer funding for campaign commercials. Now, how many Americans really think that's a very good idea? It would have required same-day registration in every election in every state in the United States, even though the state of New York just 2 months ago had a referendum on this and voted by double digits against that sort of thing. And it would have done away with voter ID. This is my driver's license. In the state of Mississippi and in most states, you have to show some sort of ID when you show up. So I can't say I'm Joe Jones, I'm here to vote, and they have to take my word for it. I think the bill would have, it wouldn't have made elections more open, right, but I think it would have made it easier to cheat, and I think most people saw that. The rhetoric in Atlanta was unworthy of a president. I agree with Mitch McConnell on that.
Yeah, and I had to show my license when I got my COVID shot, so for vaccination. So, you were involved. I want to change topics here. You were involved in the discussions over the bipartisan infrastructure bill. That's the one major piece of legislation the president got signed into law. But the victory was soured, right? I mean, sorely the U.S. needs this infrastructure upgrade. The bill passed the Senate in August. It took 3 months to make it law.
Well, yes, the president has signed it, and of course, it's going to be a lot of. It takes a lot of time to implement right, a lot of things. You had Rodney Davis, a good friend of mine, on in the previous hour. He mentioned a bill that he has got that would use previously appropriated money. We used a lot of previously appropriated money for that infrastructure bill. So, yeah. Look, we need to get started building roads, highways, seaports and airports because our infrastructure is crumbling.
So, Senator, you're on the Commerce and Transportation Committee. I've seen studies that say that changing the rules and allowing truck drivers, just briefly, to drive 18 minutes longer would help move containers away from ports. Do you feel like the administration responded fast enough to these supply chain issues?
No, but I think that's a good idea and a reasonable idea. Also, I would tell you this, in the state of Mississippi, a 19-year-old can drive a truck from the Gulf Coast up to the Tennessee line, and that's perfectly legal. Why shouldn't that same capable truck driving young 19-year-old guy be able to drive across the Mississippi River from DeSoto County to Arkansas? There are a lot of things we can do to open up the supply chain and get this economy going. But the worst thing we can do right, is continue to feed this inflationary, voracious right, inflationary lion that's eating up the earnings and pay raises of average Americans.
Last thing, you're on the Armed Services Committee. I want to get in Russia. Russia has been sort of poking the West. We saw a cyber attack now in the Ukraine, and many thought cyber attack would be a precursor to an invasion of Ukraine. Do you think the Russian President Putin is going down that road? Do you think the administration has done enough to stop it?
No, they haven't done enough to stop it. And when we see the budget coming out in a few weeks, I think we're going to see proposed cuts in the defense budget will be exactly the wrong signal to send. Listen, Ronald Reagan called the Soviet Union the evil empire. There's a very evil man running Russia right now called Vladimir Putin, and his goal is country by country, inch by inch, mile by mile, to restore this evil empire that Ronald Reagan denounced. And it's time that the freedom-loving people of Europe stood up against this. And we had an opportunity yesterday, earlier this week, rather, to vote on the Nord Stream pipeline. It was the Cruz amendment. It got more than a majority of the vote because we have a 60 vote requirement. It didn't pass. But we need to stand up strong to Vladimir Putin, lest he reconstitute the evil empire that Ronald Reagan was talking about.
Senator Wicker, thank you for your time. We covered a lot of ground there. I appreciate it, from the great state of Mississippi. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
So with the midterms looming,